It's Alex from Nintendo. That's not what I say. Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Life here, and I'm back finally with another Soapbox. It's only been, what, like 2 months? It's been a while. There's just been so much to talk about. I haven't had time for opinions. But now it is back, and it is back with a vengeance. And today, we're going to be talking about the wonderful game that is like this. I have to put my hands above the screen so you don't make the silly joke. Arms! Yes, we are going to be talking about Arms today. And I'm going to be talking about it from the perspective of how many people seem to have been a little bit deflated with it over time. That's not what I mean. People seemed a little bit deflated with it to begin with, but now people are sort of starting to warm to it a little bit more, and it's reminding me of another game. I don't know whether you sort of maybe remember something off the top of your head, thinking maybe 2014, maybe the other game that's in the title of this video. I've been getting such a Splatoon vibe from this whole sort of situation surrounding Arms, not in terms of gameplay or anything like that, but in terms of people's reactions towards it. Initial things were just sort of, what is this? Sort of, they don't, people really don't understand it. When I first saw it, I thought this looks a bit pants. I really didn't think much of it. And then over time, people seem to be warming to it a little bit more. I've been able to play it, albeit a much earlier build of the game, I believe, because it didn't include a load of the stuff that I'm going to be talking about later. And over time, it's just become this hugely deep, immersive game. And, well, I mean, Splatoon maybe was a little bit sour when it first came out, what with having, not having many maps and stuff like that, and the gear abilities and all that sort of stuff. But then over time, it became something truly wonderful. And I'm not saying I want that again for Arms. I'd much rather it come out all at once at the beginning, maybe with a few updates down the line, but not quite in the same way as Splatoon because, well, as much as it was good, I just sort of would like it all at once. But the game, when we first saw it, looked so basic, and Nintendo were very clear and very quick to say this uses a lot of tact, it's a much more hardcore game, compared to the 1-2 switch that they showed off when talking about the HD Rumble. And apart from that, we didn't really hear any more, and we sort of thought, well, Nintendo would say that to us, wouldn't they? Sort of, don't worry, it's a hardcore game. It's for you cool people, not for the mums. And we didn't believe them. Because, as I said, Nintendo would say that. But now this game has become so deep, and even on the early build that I played, which didn't have all of the abilities that I'm just about to talk about, it still felt much deeper and more engrossing than I think a lot of people really appreciated or even expected in many ways. I mean, I know a number of people who still don't think it looks very good. They think it looks a bit naff, a couple of my colleagues to say the least, but I also know a lot of my colleagues who say they think it looks absolutely fantastic. And I think with the addition of these new abilities that we heard about in the most recent Nintendo Direct, which is what I'm about to get onto now, could be even deeper than we ever thought. So it is not just waggle, 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 waggle. It's nothing like that. And it's not just, sort of who can punch the fastest or the hardest. There's an incredible amount of strategy and depth involved, and even strategy instead of strategy. I'm afraid I'm going to have to look at my notes for this one because there's just too much information for me to remember. One of the things that they focused on was the elemental types for the different arms. They're calling them, it's really sort of boxing gloves and fists and stuff like that, but they're calling them arms, and it's kind of weird, but sort of, I suppose if you think about it from like armament point of view, as in, well, weapons, then yeah, it does kind of make sense. But anyway, let's go on to the topic at hand. So from what has been revealed, there are 7 elemental types, or even 7. I cannot count. There is fire, electric, ice, explosion, stun, blind, and wind. Or wind, they didn't say. Now, we know that fire gives a sort of a burning effect, so maybe it has some long-term damage, some sort of draining damage or something like that. There's electric, which they said stuns as well, or at least shocks opponents, but there's also the stun one, so I'll get onto that in a minute. There's also ice, which slows your enemies down, and wind, which picks up your enemies and sort of throws them a greater distance, maybe. So we don't know about blind, stun, or explosion, which is quite a lot. I think we can safely assume that blind is going to be, it's going to reduce your vision somehow, maybe make the screen darker, or maybe sort of splatters like the old sort of the blooper from Mario Kart, that sort of thing where it goes But that wouldn't make an awful lot of sense. But who knows? Maybe it's full of ink. Maybe it's a Splatoon crossover. Maybe all the ARMS characters are actually Inklings in disguise. That's less likely. Stun, I imagine, is maybe something a little bit more straightforward. Maybe it's even, you know, sort of to disable ARMS or something like that. But we really can't be sure at the moment. And the last one is Explosion. Now, we've seen Explosion, but I don't think we do know quite what it does. It may be that it has sort of a splash damage area, so it's easier to hit opponents. It has sort of just a bigger sort of surface area, if you like, but we don't know that for sure. But the fact that there are all these different elemental things and each single ARM has its own elemental type and stuff like that, it's bonkers. The amount of variety there's going to be is absolutely staggering. And that's not even getting onto the abilities. And again, we're seeing more sort of Splatoon vibe in here, where on the surface everything looks very simple, but underneath the layers it becomes incredibly complex and incredibly detailed. And if you've seen any esports of Splatoon, you will know that, goodness gravy, people have got that stuff refined to a T. I should know, I lost tremendously. Okay, now I'm going to very briefly touch on the fighter abilities, because I could make an entire video just about the fighter abilities, but that is not what this is about. This is all about the Soapbox. So without further ado, I'm going to do it as quickly as possible, and I'm going to have to stare over there at my screen. So if you'll please. Springman can deflect attacks when he's charged his weapons. I don't quite know how they sort of brushed over that. It's something to do with the release of energy, but it looks like his weapons are still charged. And also when he's at low health, he gets permanent charge on his arms, if you like. Moving on to Min Min. Min Min deflects when dodging with a sort of like a kick attack and can transform her right arm into a dragon. And I don't think it's limited to the dragon arm itself. So I think no matter what arm you've got, you can do that dragon thing. But who knows? We really don't at the moment. Ribbon Girl seems to jump higher, and in one of the videos they mentioned briefly that it looks like Ribbon Girl is like the hoppy princess or something along those lines. That just sounds like a delicious beer to me. Mechanica, I've got to get her name right because I can never remember her name. Mechanica doesn't flinch, so I'm assuming, you know, sort of when you hit Mechanica, unless it's a very powerful one that causes her to fly, then it's not going to make her react. She's just going to be able to continue fighting, which is very, very useful. There's also Ninjara, who moves faster, and that's all that they explained. He also disappears when dodging, so I'm wondering whether when dodging that's some sort of invulnerability. Maybe for everyone it's invulnerability, we don't know. And lastly, Master Mummy is listed as sturdy. We don't know any more than that. So I hope that gives you at least a very basic glimpse as to all the depth and things like that. And there are also 4 more characters that we know of that are coming to the game. If you missed that, there's a link up there. We found that they were leaked. The lovely people on Reddit found it. And it seems like a really obvious thing that Nintendo should have picked up on, but they didn't. But there is so much to this game now. It's layer upon layer upon layer, just like Splatoon, just like I said. And I honestly think we could be looking at the same situation here. The initial reveal was lukewarm, and then over time its excitement sort of built up a bit. People got very excited. It released and it actually delivered. That was the important thing. So it could well be that ARMS could be a flop if they can't deliver, but from what I've played, it looks really, really good. So here's hoping. And honestly, I think if they're sensible, and Nintendo have been pretty sensible when it comes to the Switch, except with 1-2 Switch, I think they could be really onto a winner with ARMS. And honestly, I hope so much that it's a massive success, because I think it deserves to be. It's something really original and different. I mean, it is a fighting game at the end of the day, so it's nothing insanely different in that time. It's not Snake Pass kind of different, but it is still, you know, sort of this sort of long range, but still sort of close combat idea, and having all these different weapons and things like that. I think to sort of try and create a game this sort of basic in many regards, in the fact that there's, you know, sort of only one form of gameplay. I mean, if you compare it to something like Breath of the Wild, that is very bold and very, very risky, really. I mean, you still get fighting games today, but it's generally smaller companies and more sort of semi-budget releases. I mean, you had Pokken Tournament and things like that, so there is still a market for it, but this is sort of introducing so many new features. It feels very risky. Much like Splatoon, which really tried to take a genre that was established and totally turn it on its head and make it just something wonderful and breathe real, fresh new life into things. And I'm just rambling now. I really, really hope ARMS is successful. I hope it really kicks off, especially in things like the competitive scene, if it can do. I'm not a competitive player. There may be competitive people watching this saying ARMS couldn't possibly be, in which case I apologize for suggesting that, but who knows? You probably haven't played it either, certainly not the final build, so you don't know, so shush. But what do you think? Do you think we're looking at the new Splatoon, or are we looking at the new What's an unsuccessful game? Star Fox Zero, I suppose, although that feels kind of sad to say because I still like that game. I think I like it more than most people. Let us know what you think down there in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, then why don't you look through that selection of different ARMS themed subscribe buttons and choose ours, and be sure to check out nintendolife.com for all sorts of lovely Nintendo related content. Thank you again for watching. Bye bye.